I'm going to call our meeting to order and read the checklist. Here it is. Okay, as chair of the Sanborn Regional School Board's Excellence in Student Achievement Subcommittee, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and in accordance with the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this body is authorized to meet electronically. Please note that there is no physical location to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which was authorized pursuant to the governor's emergency order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that we are A, providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. We are utilizing Zoom for this electronic meeting. All members of the Sanborn Regional School Board's Excellence in Student Achievement Subcommittee have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through this platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting through dialing the following phone number: 1-646-558-8656, meeting ID 963-9760-2064, by clicking on the following website address: www.youtube.com/c/SRSD meeting videos. B, providing public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of the necessary information for accessing the meeting, including how to access the meeting using Zoom or telephonically. Instructions have also been provided on the website of the Sanborn Regional School District at www.siu17.net. C, providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anybody has a problem, please call 603-642-8541 or email at helpdesk@siu17.net. D, adjourning the meeting if the public is unable to access the meeting. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, please also state whether there is anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. I will start. Tammy Mahoney, I'm alone in my home.
Jamie Fitzpatrick, I'm alone in my home office.
Patty?
Patty Haynes, I'm in my office in the SAU alone.
Dawn?
I am in a room by myself, but there are family members all over the house.
Ryan?
I am in my home in a room by myself.
Donna?
I'm at Bakey School. I share a room with Kim Conant, so she may be in and out, but she's a district employee.
Matt?
Yeah, Matt Malilla. I'm at home alone.
Chris?
Chris Snyder, I'm here in my office at Bakey School alone.
And Tom?
Tom Ambrose, superintendent. I am in the car, but the two juniors cannot hear me, so I am technically alone.
Okay, thank you. First on our agenda is approve the minutes. Do I have a motion on the minutes of our February 10th meeting?
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Jamie, by roll call.
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Unanimous. Does anyone have any objection if I flip our agenda items and have our update on the high school diploma schedule committee meeting first? Yeah.
Fine with me.
I just don't want that to get lost in the shuffle because I think our math curriculum discussion will be lengthy. I want to make sure we get that the attention it deserves.
Okay.
So,
Are you ready for me to begin, Tammy?
yes, thank you.
Okay. It'll be a little bit more brief than had we had our meeting last week. Our meeting, last week's meeting got pushed out to tomorrow with the COVID vaccine. We didn't want to have people missing because of the, effects of a vaccine or, tired. So, but I can give you an update from our February 18th meeting. That's largely a work session. We, as I mentioned in our previous EISA meeting, that we had developed 3 subcommittees, committee looking at career and workforce, a committee looking at post-secondary, and then another committee looking at other schools and what they have for graduation requirements and diploma requirements. So on February 8th, when we met, and it was largely a work session. The meetings are in Zoom, but we broke out into breakout groups, and each subcommittee really put together a plan for what they wanted to accomplish, and had things that they were going to work on during the month of March. So we'll find out how things have been going tomorrow. But for instance, I'm on the Career and Workforce Subcommittee. So we identified the need for creating a survey, which we did late February, early March. We based the survey on the high school's work study practices, which are really 4 general categories of skills and traits you would want any worker to have. And so the committee created a survey. Mrs. Alley pushed that out through her contacts, area businesses and other groups. And we're collecting that information now. So we'll start looking at that tomorrow night. I know that the post-secondary committee is going to be reaching out to college admissions officers, former graduates, just to see, how well our graduates fare, in comparison to other students from other schools, and how well our graduates feel how well prepared they were for college. So, again, we'll learn tomorrow night how they've been faring in collecting information. And then the other schools committee, I know, and I think Jamie's on that committee. I think they're looking at up to maybe 20 other schools across New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and looking at their graduation requirements and other data, such as graduation rates, and what percentage of students go to 4-year colleges, vocational school, military, workforce, and just general information about the surrounding schools. So I'm hoping that after tomorrow, we have a plan in place where we can bring some kind of a preliminary report back to this committee in April. So I think we're right in the middle of it right now. So do you have any questions for me, Tammy?
I don't at this point. Thank you very much.
Jamie or Don, did I miss anything that I should have covered?
No, I mean, an awful lot of data has been gathered on our committee, and it will be crunching the data and going back and forth. Included in the data is not just the graduation requirements, but actually the grade scores, et cetera, and how different schools rank in terms of grade scores. And frankly, we didn't rank so high. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. But all that data is together, and a lot of links, and people were pretty handy with links. So a lot of data sets aren't just one number. There's links to go into deeper and deeper. So a lot of information to go through.
Yeah, I don't really have anything else to add. I'm part of we did the survey. So we're waiting for a lot of data to come back there. So once we have that, we'll be able to really dive into that and move forward.
But again, Tammy, I'm hoping that we can, bring some, the goal is to bring something to this committee in April. So I don't know if that'll be a firm recommendation for, or a variety of options for, what we could, if we feel like we need to adjust our graduation requirements. But, again, we'll see what tomorrow brings, and we'll probably have a fair amount of work to do between tomorrow's meeting and, our next meeting in April. But that's fine, because it's good work. It's interesting. And I think everybody in the committee, everybody I talked to is pretty excited about it. And, wants to put in the work to, for the betterment of Sanborn High School.
Thank you. Anything else on that before we move on? Okay, moving on.
So I've got the program selection report presentation for tonight for everybody. And the subcommittee members received a copy of the actual report, and all of this information will be put onto the Sanborn website tomorrow once we've all looked at it. So at this time, I'm just going to share my screen so that we can take a look at the PowerPoint and get started. So we had a number of teachers working together on the committee to figure out what kinds of programs were available and look at the programs and really do a deep dive into analysis to pick a new program for us to use for K through 6 at both Beakey and Memorial Elementary Schools. And these are the committee members, and I want to just give them a lot of recognition and a huge thank you, because we did this, we started in the fall, as you'll see in a couple minutes, and we worked all the way through the pandemic, all the craziness that this year brought. So I really want to give them a huge shout out and a thank you to Donna Donnell, who's here at the meeting with us, Amy Carroll, kindergarten, Gail Charest, 1st grade, Trisha Black, 2nd grade, Bonnie Banyas, 3rd grade, Carrie Daigle, 4th grade, Rich Laporte, 5th grade, Sherry Alessio, 6th grade, Jolene Johnson and Sue Burns, special education case managers. I want to thank them all for the hard work. They did all kinds of research, and it was a lot of work. So thank you to all of them. So the program selection began actually in spring of 2019 when we started to get more concerned about the data that we were seeing from our students. And as it says in the report, there was a presentation that was put together by the New Hampshire School Administrators Association that Donna and I both attended. And we gathered some information from different companies, publishing companies, to see what was going on. And we were going to get going at the beginning of the 1920 school year, and things sort of went slowly, and then the pandemic hit. So we assembled our committee in the fall of 2020. We had reorganization, we had the pandemic, so it was a little bit delayed. We had volunteers from each grade level, as you saw, and we had special educators on the committee. I'm going to give a historical view for people to get an understanding of where we have been and why we're in the position we're in right now. So in 2007, Everyday Math, which we've abbreviated as EDM, was chosen as the math program for the district. In 2012, Everyday Math deployed an updated edition that aligned with the Common Core State Standards. And it's important to understand that the Common Core State Standards are the basis for all of the high stakes tests, whether that's the SAT, the Smarter Balance test, the statewide assessments. All the tests are based on the Common Core State Standards. The standards really outline what is being covered in each grade level and to what extent. So they align that with the Common Core State Standards. And then in 2016, a new edition was deployed, and that's the one that we're currently using. And looking back just over 5 years, and this is the same data that's presented in the annual report that comes out every year right at the deliberative session. But this way it's presented in a graph. You can see that we've got all kinds of variation. Teachers did follow the program closely, and they were adding in supplemental instructional methods and materials. But over time, you're going to see that student learning did not improve. There was a precipitous dip in 2018. And in 2018, what happened was the state of New Hampshire stopped using the Smarter Balanced Assessment, the SBAC, and they switched to their own state assessment, the New Hampshire statewide assessment system. So because you actually change the test, you're not comparing apples to apples anymore from 2017, the last year of SBAC, to 2018, the first year of the New Hampshire statewide assessment. Slide's not showing. Oh, geez. I'm sorry. Hold on. Let's see what happened. Let's try this again. Is that working now?
Yes, it is. Thank you, Patty.
Sorry. Oh, my goodness. So let me go back quickly. There's the committee members. I went through them. And I went through the introduction and the historical view, and we talked a little bit about everyday math. So here we are, and the dip that we saw in 2018 when Smarter Balanced was ended and the New Hampshire statewide assessment was started. So there was a change. And again, when you have a different assessment, you have a little bit of an implementation issue. Now, this data, what we wanted to look at was not only just looking at how the students are doing from year to year and are they progressing in math, which you want to see a steady incline, but you also want to see if the program is doing what it says it's supposed to do. And so the next chart, and this was also included in the report, shows the cohort trends. Now, this is going to take a little explanation because it looks different and there's all kinds of different numbers and it just doesn't look like it makes a lot of sense. But each line represents a different cohort of students. And a cohort is a group of students that starts together at a certain time period. And that light blue line, for instance, third grade started in 2015 together, and they had the 68% meeting proficiency. So following that light blue line, up and down shows how they went from third grade to fourth grade to fifth to sixth, and ending in seventh grade at 70%. So by looking at how the cohort does over time, and just comparing the cohort to itself, what you end up seeing is the beginning number and the end number are essentially the same. The group in red, grade 4 in 2015, started at 47, looked like they were getting better. We had that dip in 2018, ended at 45 in 2019, and we didn't have testing in 2020. So each group sort of ended in the same place where they started. And when you're looking at programs and you're looking at how programs are working, this data tells us that the program has a problem. The students are not getting what they need from the program itself. And even with all the adding on of instructional materials and methods, we were not able to overcome that. So there's a problem with the program, which we've all pretty much noticed. There are problem issues. There are program issues with what we had with everyday math. So the data is telling us that even with supplements to the program, our yearly scores didn't improve. We never could break that threshold of about 70% proficient. We want our students doing better than that. Cohort growth, which we just saw, followed the same group of students. Essentially, that was unchanged. So we have problems with our math program, everyday math. We've known this for a while. So now we're looking at how the committee went through and selected the program that we're going to be recommending by the end of the presentation and what we went through. And in order to understand program selection, we need to understand a little bit about what math instruction is. So the math committee took every student will see themselves as a mathematician as the vision for the math program, vision for all of math for students in Sanborn. We want every student to see themselves as a mathematician. We want them to think that, yes, I can do this, I can do math, I understand it. Doesn't mean they're all going to go out and be engineers and mathematicians, but they feel that they are successful doing math. And that's our vision for all of our students with the Sanborn math program. When you look at math instruction, those little boxes at the bottom talk about what is involved in math instruction. You have a piece called conceptual understanding. This really is the math concepts, the operations. Students need to understand why an idea is important and where to use it. And if they understand the concepts, the operations, and how everything goes together and have a good foundation, retention is almost guaranteed because you've connected the math facts with when you use them. When, my sister takes one of my cookies, I know that that's subtraction and that makes sense to me. And it's harder to forget math when you have that connection. And if you get a little rusty, it's easier to sort of rebuild what you're learning. Procedural fluency is carrying out the procedures flexibly, accurately, and efficiently. So students know when and how to use procedures and they do it appropriately. They know when to add. They know that multiplication is better than repeated addition, for instance. So they're really good at using the right kinds of procedures. Strategic competence is the ability to problem solve. Can I figure out a problem, real world application of things? And so we want to have a program that's going to give our students real world problems, because we don't do math just in isolation. We know we go to the grocery store, eggs are on sale. This brand is 2 dozen for $5. This brand is 3 dozen for $8. Which one's the better bargain? We want them to be able to figure that out. Then you've got adaptive reasoning, which is the logical thinking that is involved in math. And all of those things come together to give the students something that's called productive disposition. They see that math makes sense. They understand that it's useful. They think that if they work hard, their effort pays off, and they can see themselves as a mathematician. And that's all of the pieces that come together in any math program. That's just math instruction 101, really quick and dirty. And there's entire college courses that you could take that will spend months on everything I just gave you in a quick nutshell. So in order to have that vision come to life, we went through a process where we looked at programs, and we used 3 different pieces of measurement to figure this out. So we really had triangulation of data to make sure we were gathering all of the information we could about all these programs. The first piece of information that we used was the IMET. The IMET is the Instructional Materials Evaluation Tool, and the link to that tool is in the back of the report that was shared with the subcommittee. And what it does is it basically guides reviewers to find evidence for criteria in 3 categories: things that are non-negotiable, alignment, and then indicators of quality. The IMET was developed in response to the Common Core. So when the Common Core state standards came out, knowing that the assessments were going to be tied to them, the IMET was developed so educators could find programs that would help students learn what they were supposed to be learning. The non-negotiables in the IMET, there were 2 of them. Materials have to follow what the standards lay out, so that you can't be assessing students on topics before they're taught. You want to make sure that they understand something before you assess them. The other part that's non-negotiable is that materials have to focus on the major work in that grade level. So if there are certain topics that are the grade 3 topics, that's what you're spending your time on. You're not spending time on covering all kinds of stuff that may not be important, because students are not going to get a deep understanding of that. So the IMET looks at all of those pieces that we discussed before about conceptual understanding, application, skills, fluency, aligning standards to math practice. Also looks at making sure that all of our students have access to math. These are our students who are on IEPs and 504s. These are our English language learners. Do the materials in the program help those students learn as well, because all of our students need to learn math. And the final thing, the indicators of quality, is to look to make sure that the materials and lessons are well designed, support learning, and they make sense. So on the next slide, this is just a page from the IMET. This is 1 page out of the 40-page document that the teachers used. And it really just talks about what they need to have together, what they're going to be reviewing. Here's non-negotiable 2. Materials must focus on the major work. And so the teachers go through and they look at the program that they're analyzing to see if what the program has meets the non-negotiables. If teachers were looking through the programs and one of the 2 non-negotiables was not met, they stopped even considering that program, because it's a non-negotiable. These are things you have to have in order to have a cohesive, strong math program. So by doing that, programs were eliminated just by going through the IMET. Now, if the teachers had programs and the programs made it through the IMET, so this was like our first hurdle, then they went and they used Ed Reports. And Ed Reports is a nonprofit, educator-led team that reviews educational programs through evidence, materials, talking to publishers, and they produce reports that are available online at edreports.org, and you could look all kinds of things up on there. And they rate them as either meet expectations, partially meet expectations, or does not meet expectations for the programs that they look at. And in that website on Ed Reports, they have a grid that sort of gives you an overview of, okay, if their gateways to look at standards alignment and design elements and materials, they talk about how if it gets through the first gateway and the second gateway, that's how it meets. If it gets through the first gateway, but not the second one, it partially meets. So they really go through all of their sort of criteria to develop their reports. So that was used as a second piece of data for us as we were reviewing this. So if you get through the IMET, now we go to Ed Reports and we look to see what they say. Maybe we're wrong on what we thought in the IMET, and Ed Reports is telling us something different. So we had to have conversations about that. But our team was so diligent and so good that when it got through the IMET, a lot of times we had no problem getting through Ed Reports and what they said. So the third part of it, and this was very important to us at Sanborn, we have district needs. The program that we chose had to align with what we have here in our district as what we want our students to know and be able to do. That's the things that are outlined in the graduate student success profile. We needed to make sure we had digital resources. This past year with the pandemic and online learning and Zooming up the wazoo, we were doing a lot of stuff online. We needed technology to support the learning. And we wanted to make sure that the program had high engagement. The kids would see why the math was important. It's exciting, this is interesting, and it lines up with math teaching practices. The National Council of Teachers of Mathematics has math teaching practices that are outlined, and we're going to talk about that in a bit. The other one of the things that I wanted to point out is that Tom's vision for the district is to have workshop model across all of our content areas. And so we needed to make sure that the mathematical program that we chose aligned with Tom's vision for the district. So we've got all these things in mind on this list as we're going through our programs. Here is the math teaching practices. This was included as an appendix in the report. And basically, this is National Council of Teachers of Mathematics saying that teachers need to establish math goals so that learning is focused, implement tasks that promote reasoning and problem solving. You're starting to hear echoes of what we talked about a little earlier. Use and connect math representations, facilitate math discourse. So having conversations about how did you solve that? How did I solve that? Asking questions. Building fluency, so being able to solve those problems quickly so that I know how to answer those questions. Support productive struggle, knowing that it might take a little bit to understand something, but eventually we can solve a problem. And to find out how students are thinking, because there's a lot of different ways to come to an answer, and we want to make sure that all of our students have a way to express what they're learning and what they know. So here is Sanborn's checklist. We wanted to make sure that the program had cohesive units with no spiraling, and spiraling curriculum is what we've got in everyday math. You talk about a topic for a little bit, we drop it, and we might come back to it in 4 or 5 weeks. A cohesive unit stays with that content or stays with that subject until we get all the way through and have a deep understanding of that. We wanted to make sure that the lessons were structured and that there was skill practice. Those programs needed to have skills, skill practice, fluency, being able to solve those problems so that students could really retrieve the operations so they could put the application into practice. Visuals to support all learners. Visuals are huge, huge, huge helps for our students, especially when they're young. They need to see the concrete pictures. They need to understand what's happening. So we wanted to make sure the program had that. We wanted real world purposeful math because that's how you're going to engage our students. They understand why it's important to learn math. Family support and connections, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. And of course, the ever-present technology piece. We sent out a family survey to families through each of the school newsletters at the 4 schools. It was open from January 30th to February 8th, and it asked families what their experience was with the math program. What did they think was working? How did they see what their students were learning? What was something that they might want more of? And we'll talk about those results in a little bit. So this is yet another piece of information that we used when we were choosing the program. So we had the IMET, we had Ed Reports, we had our list, and then we wanted to know what are our families thinking? What do they need from us? What do they need from the program? So doing all of that, what happened next was we had presentations and a pilot. Publishers came by Zoom and presented their programs and answered questions about programs in January. Then teachers test flew some programs with their classes. They taught a whole unit beginning to end, gave an assessment, and gathered information. Information was whether the assessment test scores could have been how students were interacting with the material. All that information was gathered and everything was discussed. Now we get to our findings. 12 out of 20 programs were immediately eliminated just through going with the IMET and ED reports. We got rid of them right off the bat. We had 20 programs in the hopper. We got rid of 12 of them. Then, looking at the remaining 8, we eliminated additional programs because they didn't match district needs. Either they weren't going to fit in with workshop model scheduling, they might not have been developmentally appropriate for some of our students. For instance, we couldn't differentiate for our special education students, different things like that. So their technology was not developed fully. There were a lot of reasons that we eliminated them based on the district needs. Interestingly enough, Everyday Math was one of the programs that, yes, we looked at and we eliminated because it did not meet the alignment criteria in the IMET. The IMET alignment criteria talks about the Common Core standards that all of the testing is based on. Red alert, like alarms going off here. This is a problem. It's not doing for the students what it should be doing to match the standards that all those tests are developed from. Ed reports scored Everyday Math for rigor and math practices does not meet. Focus and coherence, staying on a topic, partially meets. Overall, it does not meet. So Everyday Math went out the window for us. We had our family survey. We had 136 responses come in, mostly at the 2 elementary schools, another portion at the middle school, a few at the high school. And the overview for that told us that for the most part, parents agreed that their children were doing well in math. They had a good math foundation, but we really weren't doing a good job as a district with having the parents, giving parents reference materials, giving parents education about what's going on in math. So these are things that really came out in this survey that we needed to really think about. Okay, so our parents are not feeling connected. Our families don't feel like they understand what's happening, but they think their kids are doing pretty well. So that's something we wanted to think about as we progress through this program selection. So now we've got our recommendation. I feel like we should have a horn or something going off. So we're recommending that we adopt the Envision Mathematics 2020 Common Core program for these reasons. Envision Math fulfills the requirements of the IMET. It went through the non-negotiables, it went through the alignment criteria, it went through the indicators of quality. We felt very comfortable with that. It's aligned to the Common Core math standards that all of those high stakes tests are based on. Ed reports scored it high in focus and coherence, rigor in math practices, and usability. It met expectations. There's no exceeding expectations. Meets is perfect. That's your gold standard. It meets our district needs. And I'm going to show you some sample pages and some pieces of the program with the understanding that these are pieces that were taken out of samples that were given to us. And we've got, and I'm sort of in a small picture, but here's the student book we've got a sample of. There's actually a student book that is used. There were other resources for teachers, and the sample pages that you're going to be seeing are portions of the pages from the resources. So here we've got support for students at all levels. We've got the intervention piece, which is important, part of the work that we're doing in the district with intervention for students. We've also got enrichment for our students embedded in the program. So we're looking at both ends of our spectrum of learners. Just a couple of examples, and this is 3rd grade. More sample pages, guided practice where the teacher walks students through how to solve some math. Independent practice where the student solves this in class and the teacher checks on it as they're working independently. So again, lots of practice, lots of learning, things that they're doing right in class. In class practice, additional practice, Preparations for those high stakes assessments, like the New Hampshire statewide assessment. This was very important from the family survey, a family connection letter that will go home with every unit that talks about, here's what we're going to be covering, here's what it's going to look like, and then a page that goes home as part of regular practice for parents to see an example of how something is done and chances to practice at home. And homework will be part of the regular practice going forward. We need to make sure that our students are practicing so that they get better at everything that they're doing. There are also fluency practice pages. These look like the old school, just, rote arithmetic, but they need this. They need this fluency practice. They could be assessments, they could be practice, checking to make sure that our students are continuing to oil their gears in their head about how to do the math so that when it comes time to do the application, it comes easier. The program also meets our needs. This is our checklist. The units are cohesive. It doesn't spiral. We start with a unit and we're talking about adding and subtracting 2-digit numbers. That's what we're covering. And we're going to cover that until we really understand that. Instead of doing a little bit, coming back later, maybe they got it, maybe they forgot. That was not working for us. The units are structured. There is skill practice. We have visuals that support learners. We have manipulatives for the little ones. You need like little bingo chips and buttons and things to move around so they can count and things like that. Math is real world. It's purposeful. It's going to engage our students. We've got family support and connections in there. And the technology piece for Envision is up and running. It's good. The teachers have used some of it, and we feel comfortable with that being a resource for our students to use at home with parents and families. And it's also technology for our teachers to use for them to develop their own professional development ongoing. So we're proposing this implementation timeline, depending on what the subcommittee says tonight, that we would order our materials in the spring. We would be doing summer professional development for all of our teachers K through 6. And that would be sort of an initial up and running PD, but then there would also be ongoing professional development to make sure that the program is getting implemented the way it's supposed to be implemented. Questions are getting answered. We're also going to be collecting data to see how are our students doing, how are our teachers doing. This could be informally at curriculum meetings, formally by trimester, all kinds of data getting collected and having constant conversations about how this is going. And Donna would be a huge piece of doing that along with me and the principals at the buildings. We believe that Envision will help us achieve our vision that every student at Sanborn will see themselves as a mathematician. That's what we want for our kids. We know we can do better. We have to do better. And by doing this very extensive research, we believe that we have a program that will fulfill this. And now I will take some questions and stop sharing the slides that weren't showing initially. And I'm sorry about that.
Thank you very much. That's a really thorough job, and it's clear that you worked really hard to put that together. Appreciate it. Questions? Jamie, I know you have some. Do you want to start? Look, you're muted.
Sure, I can start. I didn't want to hog up all the time. Just some questions from the presentation itself. Did we limit ourselves to Common Core? I mean, I don't find Common Core to be the highest bar there is. I consider it to be a minimum bar. Did everything we talked about was Common Core, Common Core? Did we limit ourselves to just Common Core? Did we look at things that are in excess of Common Core?
There really isn't anything that's in excess of Common Core when it comes to programs, because if you think nationally, the way some of the larger states that do purchasing of programs are very driven by test scores. And I'm talking about places like Florida and Texas that actually tie teacher teacher retention and coming back year after year to how the kids in the class are doing, they drive a lot of what the publishers are putting out. And so the programs are developed with the Common Core in mind. Now, the Common Core is the basis for those high stakes tests that we're doing all of our data gathering on. Also, any of the NEWA, everything is based on those standards. So they're really, that's pretty much what we're using as our measure to see what, what are the programs that are available. And most of the publishers are looking at the Common Core as their sort of framework.
Yeah, I mean, I realize all those points. My point would only be Common Core doesn't go fast enough or far enough. And if you're faster and farther than Common Core, you can still do better on the Common Core tests.
So I just want to chime in briefly, if I could, Jamie. I think that's a great question. That point, I would need to know what your data or research is saying that the Common Core isn't rigorous, because I've found the reverse, that the Common Core is incredibly rigorous. And if you look at the teachers' college units of study in reading and writing, one of the hardest parts of getting kids to that level is that they are Common Core aligned and they're incredibly challenging. So I don't know. I've never heard anyone say that the Common Core isn't rigorous. I've always heard people say that it's incredibly rigorous. And
all kinds of information on people challenging Common Core's rigorousness.
Oh, don't get me wrong, please. I don't want you to hear this as an endorse. I'm not endorsing the Common Core. I'm simply trying to understand what your point is about the rigor. It doesn't mean that I agree with the instructional strategies that have been associated with the Common Core. So, for example, everyday math spiraling is an instructional strategy that has been associated with the Common Core. I don't like that instructional strategy, right?
Amen.
So there's a difference between the spiraling and some of these ridiculous strategies that have been used to teach math that negate the facts, students studying the facts. But there's a difference between that and the instructional approaches and the rigor of the expectations for yearly attainment. So I just want you to know that in my mind, I think we're talking about the same thing, but using slightly different language. So I just wanted to invite you. I would be happy, or Patty would be happy to sit down with you and understand your perspective on that. And yes, one of the criteria for us as a district is to help the kids that are going beyond what the curriculum offers. And that's why Patty mentioned that one of the criteria for looking at Envision was to look for supports for students, for the folks who are doing remediation, but also for enrichment activities. And I'll turn it back over to Patty to speak to that, because I think you're right, Jamie, that if a kid's ready to go, we need to have a program that will allow them to do so.
Right, and that's exactly what the program has, is it's got those pieces in there, so that we're not just going to, okay, this is what fourth grade says, you've got to stop here. If you want to keep going, we can figure out a way to get you up there. And all of the programs that we looked at, we wanted to make sure had those pieces.
Okay, let me, before I hog up all the time, just a few more, you can call them questions or comments. I have a concern when we're listing in the mathematical teaching practices slide or in the Sanborn's needs slide, nowhere do we mention memorization and rote practice. And to me, those are key in math, and they're just not called out as separate line items. I assume that they're going to be included somehow, but
I think that's a terminology thing.
Called out.
Yeah, no, I think that's a terminology thing. That's the fluency. Fluency is that rote memorization, because when you have that understanding that 5 + 2 is 7, you're fluent at it, you understand it. So what used to be called rote memorization, they're now calling fluency and fluency practice. So it's the same thing, it's just dressed up.
But I didn't see it listed when we listed what the district needs were. That wasn't listed. And when I saw what the mathematical teaching practices slide, it wasn't listed. I'm just pointing out that to me, that means it's not considered to be as important. And I think it is as important. We said we eliminated 8 programs for not matching the district needs. I'd like to a list of what those 8 programs were that were dismissed. Also, am I understanding correct? 136 responses. Did we send out somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,400 requests for people to do a survey when we got less than 10%? And in those families, we could actually get potentially 2 people filling out for the same child.
Dawn has her hand up.
Yeah, so I'm gonna be honest, I didn't see the survey. I did when I noticed that there were survey results. I went back through my email. The surveys were tucked into the Sunday evening newsletters that went out from each school. So if you were at 6 o'clock on Sunday night, quickly going through like I do to look for like highlights, real important, things that needed to be known for the next day, you missed it. I missed it on all three of my kids' emails. So I think that's why the survey numbers weren't higher.
Okay, thanks.
Did you see it, Jamie?
Yeah.
Okay, just wondering.
So you put some samples up. I didn't get a chance to really look at the samples. I would like an opportunity to go through the book and look at those. I assume it's a workbook. You didn't mention textbooks, so I'm assuming we don't have textbooks in this either.
Again, with the way that the programs are developed now, and Tom can also speak to this, these are the books that the students get. And these are the things that they have. And we have, a sample from 3rd grade that has some things in there, so.
Yeah, that's what I'd like to, I can either swing in or however we want to do it, but I'd like to be able to go through the book.
Mhm.
And I'll defer to others to save some time. I sent you a list of another 10 questions. You've answered a couple of them here in the meeting, but I'll defer to others here.
Oh, but can I just chime in quickly that it's important that one of the Jamie did email some questions, and the cost is an important question. So it's important to note that the cost has been analyzed, and Patty can speak to that.
So when we had budgeted $117,000 back in October, this was before we even started doing a lot of the whittling. And this was the worst case scenario based on quotes that Donna had procured from the publishers. So that's the high ceiling of the cost that we're going to be expending. Envision comes in below this 117. It's about 100,000 probably, depending on enrollments and what kinds of how many materials we're going to need of each thing. So that was a high ceiling number. We wanted to make sure we put in a high number so that we did not have an issue where, oh geez, we found something we like better, but we didn't budget appropriately.
Yeah, I mean, my question really is, what do you get for the 117? If there's not textbooks, what are you getting? The booklet that you just put up and showed is probably a $3 product. Now I understand there's proprietariness behind it or whatever, but I'd like to understand.
Yep. So what you get in the cost. So these are some of the things that are involved. You have all the teacher materials. So this is the student book. Here are 3 teacher books that you get, in addition to digital online access for teachers and students. So the digital components are always costly. Manipulatives and pieces that students can use in the classroom, print materials, in addition to some of these things, and the professional development, which is critical to making sure that the program is implemented appropriately. So all of that is bundled together, and it's the ongoing support. So if you go through the professional development and things are going well, and then right about, next March, you're kind of going, oh gosh, we need help. You pick up the phone. It's like, hey, can somebody swing in? Can somebody jump on a Zoom call? We need some support with this. So it's that ongoing piece.
I like that. Can somebody swing in when they need support? So if I need some support, Patty, I'll be giving you a call so I can swing in.
I'm gonna need some support. I'm going to be on the phone needing support.
Okay, John, go ahead.
You can go first, Tammy. It's fine.
Oh, I was just wondering if we have if we've talked to any other districts, if we know, if we've gotten any other experiential.
So Donna's got some information on that. Yep.
I was only able to talk to one district that is actually using this edition. Former editions of Envision did not meet the requirement for IMET and Ed reports. So this is the 2020-2021 version that is recently out. So Gilmanton was I talked to an assistant principal in Gilmanton.
How long have they been using it?
I did not get that information, but it is fairly new. So Okay.
Did they just adopt this new edition? They weren't using the prior edition?
So I did not get that information in the time of the actual pilot, in time for the report.
What was their opinion?
The accessibility for K2 was a little more challenging, needing some supports at the beginning. The upper grades were more successful with the independent piece. Although it was usable. Engagement was very high with the students, and the digital components were definitely an asset.
Go ahead, Don.
You stole my question, Tammy. I was going to ask, how it was faring in a school with demographics that are similar to ours and how successful was it? But we went there. Has this been piloted at all? Has this been tested?
We were able to pilot units. We did the pilot between January and February break. So it was a very short time frame for us to gather the information we gathered from all the programs we looked at, the 3 that we narrowed it down to.
Okay. And how did that rollout look? How did the teachers feel? How did students feel?
It was a select group. The teachers were great and the students were great. They were engaged. Did we pilot every single aspect of the program? Not right now in the pandemic. Engagement was high. The technology we found stronger in Envision. That was critical right now.
Okay. Does it connect, like I know right now the program we have connects with like IXL and other math programs that are online. Does this one do the same thing? Can the teachers kind of connect all of that together?
Yes.
Okay. And then I was going to ask, where did I write it? So I know the teachers, Patty, you said there are 3 books for the teachers. I don't know if that's 3 books per grade, I'm not sure how that works.
Only full set that I got was for 1 grade level, and this is what's in this bag. And then there's an additional 2 things in the bag that I didn't even take out to show you guys because there's a lot of stuff.
Okay. And that was my question is, I know you said they're printables and things like that. Is this going to be, I guess, similar to what they're doing right now, more work than what they're doing right now when it comes to printing things out, getting things ready, cutting things out, making manipulatives? I guess I'm just trying to figure out, if this is where this is gonna put the teachers at work-wise.
So I think it's similar. And I think as far as like manipulatives and cutting them out, that wouldn't be happening. You'd be getting the kits already kind of made. And again, that's something else to consider, because like right now we can't share bingo chips. We can't, like, my stuff is mine. My germs are mine, kind of a thing. So we've got to think about, are we going to be spending so that we can have a group of 4 playing a game or doing something, or does everybody need their own? So those are things we would need to look at. But my initial opinion of that would be it's not going to be more work. And because they stay with the topic from beginning to end instead of having to come back, it might be easier to manage, because if you're doing geometry and you're looking at triangles, when you're done with the triangles, you put them away. You don't have to go hunting down the triangles. It's like, oh God, I lost my triangles. And so it's how it goes with children. It's hard. And so you just beginning to end and then put it away. We're done. But we looked at a lot of components.
Okay.
When you implement the first year of a program, it does generally take more time.
Right. And I understand that. I just want to make sure in general, it's not going to create more work for our teachers, more photocopying, more, more prep, things like that. I want to make sure it's not more teacher work heavy. I mean, they've already got enough on their plates. So.
Yeah. And when we did the pilot, back to your Google Classroom question, we were not able to use the pilot with the Google Classroom based on the restrictions put in place by the pilot.
Okay. But going forward, it shouldn't be an issue.
No. They only will let you use certain pieces of their thing because it's theirs, and people can be, I guess, crafty and rip things off that they've developed, and they just don't want to. They can't. It's unfortunate. But we went with Envision over Reveal and Illustrative because both Reveal and Illustrative, Jamie, to your emailed question, were still in beta pilot format and had only been used in select classrooms throughout the country. And we were not ready to go with either one of those at this time, given where we are with our students and with our district and in the reorganization and the pandemic. We wanted to go with something that was being used more than just a few select beta pilot classrooms.
But even with that, it sounds kind of limited, right? If the last releases of this didn't meet expectations, and this is the first one that has, and it's dated last.
So copyright on this, let me just look, because even though they're calling it it's 2020. Yeah.
So there's not much history. There's not much history on this product in terms of results, performance.
Not yet. There are a lot of, go ahead, Donna.
No, because this edition is fairly new. So if we would have eliminated the 2015 Envision, because it would not have met with the adjustments they made based on the IMET meeting those criteria. This one we went forward with.
Was there any of the 8? I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Jamie.
Was there any of the 8 that were eliminated that had some legs behind them that have been in use and have more experiential information on them?
So Eureka, we eliminated based on some conversations with the amount of time it takes. We felt we also needed to look at usability. That was one that was eliminated.
Donna, can I just chime in for just 1 second on that?
Of course.
I just wanted to say that my children did Eureka, and I was adamant that it was not a program. Jamie, when you talk about the Common Core standards and the manner in which they are the Common Core instructional practices that didn't focus on that rote practice piece that we've discussed.
Yeah.
It really, Eureka did not, I did not, my kids went through that program and I don't feel comfortable recommending it to the board. Even if it's existed for a million years and it got great results in Idaho at this school or whatever, I just want you to know that as a parent of a student, I found it absolutely frustrating and infuriating to see the way they taught kids math. It was just ridiculous.
Isn't that the program they're using in Oyster River?
I don't know, and I'm just telling you that I had it for 7 years in my house, and it was very, very unappealing.
Okay.
Certainly, if the whole board says, "Hey, we're going to do Eureka Math," we'll do Eureka Math, but it doesn't have the components that we've discussed in terms of the rote practice. We were trying to find something that bridged that skill-based component that we all have identified as being a real need with the application component that builds interest in mathematics. And yes, they've worked really hard to find that. But one of the things that we struggled with was, are there places that it's been used and it's a brand new edition and we're in a pandemic, so that makes it very difficult. The other piece that's really important is I spoke to the superintendent at Oyster River about Eureka, and what I heard from him was that his perspective was that having a program that everyone agreed on and focused on helped them to move forward. But the real thing that really helped them to move their math scores was more time on task for math every day, which is something we've identified as being incredibly necessary at the high school and all levels, and focusing on trying to get as many students as possible ready for Algebra 1 in 8th grade. Those were the two things that really moved them. Yeah, those were the two things that really, so in my mind, we need a program that fits our philosophy and our community's needs. But I think also that the Eureka Math program requires a lot of parental engagement, and it does not teach math in a way that is familiar to parents. And I'm saying this as a superintendent of schools. When the homework would come home, I would look at my wife and be like, this is not good. Like, it's not the way that I want my child to learn this.
What is it about this program that assures us that we will be able to prepare the kids for 8th grade algebra? That is like one of the important factors to me.
As part of the reports that we looked at through the IMET and the ED reports, if it focuses on those critical areas, there's a path that does lead to that algebra requirement that you were talking about in earlier meetings.
That's a critical component. I think that was a non-negotiable. Wasn't on your list, but that would be, it's my understanding from what we've talked about before that the studies are pretty supportive of the fact that kids will do better in high school math and on the SAT if they're able to take algebra in 8th grade. So that was a goal. That was one of the targets. So I just want to make sure that we are comfortable that this program is going to do that. Jamie, did you have your hand up before?
No, I was going to ask the second one, but then you hit it. So in the 8th grade.
I wanted to also say another program was Stepping Stones, was a program that didn't meet it passed the non-negotiables, but then when we looked at the ED reports, it partially met, and so that was one that was also eliminated. So if it passed the freedom from obstacles and it had the focus and coherence, but it still wasn't rated highly on ED reports, we did eliminate those. So that was another example of one that we looked at.
So we have paths ahead of us. We don't have to choose anything today. So I want to turn off the pressure valve on this situation. The team has done a lot of hard work. The team has worked collaboratively. And my sense of this conversation at this point is we're not saying that the team hasn't done a good job. It's just really hard to pick a program that there isn't a historical perspective on that gives us some assurances that it's going to be successful in our objective, which is to make students feel solid as mathematicians, which includes all the things we've discussed: getting students into 8th grade Algebra 1, getting students ready for math, the application of math skills by having enough rote practice combined with real world connections so that it's not boring, but it's also rooted in a sense of like fundamental basic mathematics. So I think that the question before us is, it sounds to me like the consensus of the group is we need to have some more conversations, do some more homework, and then come back together. And I want everyone to hear that that is totally okay. This is a really big decision for our district. And the committee is working really hard to try to find something that really, truly may not exist. We're looking for a unicorn. The unicorn is, it's perfectly vetted. It's been successful in a whole bunch of places. And it has a component that has traditional mathematics skills with real world application. And the reality is that most math programs these days focus on what I would consider to be very non-traditional Common Core style instructional practices. And we don't want that, right? I mean, we all agree that we don't want that. We want kids to learn math a somewhat more traditional way. And I think the reality is that just doesn't necessarily, this is the closest product to that exists. And Patty, feel free to chime in. I'm just trying to summarize that this is difficult because we're trying to find something that I said to Patty at one point, do we need to just develop our own approach to this?
We don't have the time to do that. So the option is to think about it this way, and this is something that Donna and I discussed quite a bit, because we know that we pretty much universally don't like everyday math. It's like you go from the unicorn to the like pariah. You just like, nobody wants to touch this anymore. We have an option to take this on for a year, but purchase materials for 1 year. We're not marrying the program forever, and really try it out in our classrooms with our students based on the fact that we've got our internal assessments looking at it. We had external data that say that it meets the expectations, and really give it a full year of pilot to have everybody go all in on it to see what ends up happening. And then maybe next February, March, we look at it and we say, okay, we've been in this now for 6 months. How is this going? Because knowing now that everyday math isn't doing what it needs to do, it's like Tom's little thing at the bottom of his email. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. We can make a decision to pick this. We can make a decision to wait, but everyday math is still there, and it's not helping us move the math instruction forward. So that's something else we could look at.
Amy?
Yeah, I want to respond to both of those statements in this, and I'm not trying to be critical of the committee and what they've come up with. I'm trying to understand what it means, and there's an awful lot here, and I haven't had the time. I got it. There's no weekend in between. That's when I do a lot of my work, is on the weekends, because I just don't have time during the weeks to do it. So I just, in order for me to get my head around it, I need to spend more time with it. I need to understand what was looked at, what was expelled. Maybe I'm different than most people because I'm more anal retentive, but I need to be able to go through the books, see what's in the books. I mean, I've actually in the past gone out and bought series of different books from eBay that were published at different periods of times in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s for the same grades to compare them. I just personally need a better detailed understanding of it. So Patty, I'll reach out to you if you're around at all on Friday. I don't need all your time. I just need time with the material.
And I've got 2 grade levels that you can look at. Like I said, we don't have tons of stuff because they're very like, this is ours and you haven't paid for it kind of, but yep. You can look at what is here. And I can answer questions, and I can show you some of the other things that we sort of stumbled through, and some of the reasons we threw some of the other ones out, and the concerns that we had based on all of the stuff that we discussed. That's fine. Let me know.
Yeah, that would help me also. Yeah.
Time on Friday. Yeah.
I'll reach out to you, and again, I don't need to consume all your time. You can just put me in a cubby in a corner with some of the books to pour through.
Absolutely. We've got a conference room. You can sit in there and bring a coffee.
Yeah. And
Donna.
Can I just throw in, does Donna want to go? Go
Donna
ahead.
had her hand up.
I don't know if I'm allowed to speak, but I'm happy to join you on Friday to go through the process that we went through, if that helps.
It would help me anyway.
I'd be happy to do that.
I'd like to be part of that too. I'd really like to see what's in the books and the teachers' books and things.
We could have a party. I'll bring a pint.
No.
Diet Coke. That's all I'm talking
Soda.
about.
He's bringing soda.
A&W. Yeah. Okay. We'll go that route.
Go ahead.
Okay. So can I chime in at some point? I can wait.
Yes.
I'm good.
Go ahead, Tom.
Oh, thank you, Tammy. Thanks.
Go.
Yep. Junior's learning how to drive. He's doing a great job. So I just want everyone to know I'm not doing this and driving. So I'm didn't want you to worry. I love the idea of folks coming by on Friday. We can all hang out and talk about this. So I'm happy to even pick up some barbecue. But we have to be careful about having a meeting that's a non-meeting if the whole EISA committee comes. So it might make sense for folks to rotate through or schedule a meeting at 1 o'clock or 11 o'clock at Friday at the SAU and just call it what it is. It's a EISA meeting, right? And have it remote. We can set up the Zoom. We can allow people to have it be a meeting. We can talk and ask questions. I just didn't want to, I love this idea. So Jamie, I want you to know that I have a friend who's an excellent principal that I sent a message to and said, hey, what is your take on this program? Did you ever look at it? And he told me that not only did they look at it, but they almost went with it. And it has a lot of support for teachers with regard to the instruction. And it has a very traditional, he said it's a traditional approach. So that was his exact feedback. An excellent traditional approach with the modern accoutrements that go with teaching math in the modern age. So I'm doing a little more homework to support our community, and I'd like a little more time myself. So my question is, should we schedule a meeting on Thursday, or would you like to come in individually? I just don't want to mess up any kind of like the rules. And Tammy, I know I look to you. Are you available Friday? I'm just trying to be helpful here.
What time are we talking about? During the day?
Well, I need a lot of time. I was going to park from 12 to 3.
What? 12 to
I need a lot. I literally, I want to go through the pages of the book. I was going to park from 12 to 3, but we can carve some point of that where we can get into these were the different programs that we looked at. These are the ones that were eliminated for these reasons, etc. We could do that in a meeting format. And you know, what would that take? Maybe 40 minutes. I can't imagine that'd be over an hour to just go through that kind of stuff.
So
Could we do like 10 to 1?
Can't do that, but what were you going to say, Don? What's your?
I was just going to say, I have to get my daughter to the school. So for 1 o'clock, and I have to pick her back up at 2. So I'm not available during that time frame.
Well, what works for you? I can shift around.
And then I have to pick the other one up at 2:30. Can't forget about that. So, well, get that
And I'm
at 2:30.
usually before 7. So you want to join me at 6:45? We can do that too.
I could go in at a different time. I mean, I could go in, 7 o'clock in the morning and meet, if we want to break it up. So it's not a traditional meeting. So we don't get ourselves in trouble. I don't mind doing that either. I just like to be able to actually physically look at the books, which if we were in person doing this meeting, we would be able to do. So that's the only disadvantage to doing this.
So it sounds like to some extent, so we go through in the business world, we go through mergers and acquisitions, and people buy other companies, and you create a data room, and the people that are looking to do the buying, which would be the Sanborn School Board and the Sanborn District, get a chance to come in and look at the books, as it were. What are the projections? What is the data sets, et cetera? And there's a room that gets set up, and then the people come in and go into the room and study the data sets. They're not allowed to take them out of the room, but they then get a better understanding of what it is that they're intending to buy. So that they're more comfortable with it. Sounds similar to this scenario. That might be something that we can do if everybody's got different timelines here.
I think we could easily have a math. Go ahead, Patty.
I was just gonna say we could do like an open house, and I'd set up the conference room and just put stuff in there from the program, and then Donna and I can be available to answer questions, and we can rotate in, and that might be the easiest way to do that.
Exactly what I was going to math open house.
See?
I love the idea of a math open house. Yep.
So for me, I'm not as interested in seeing the books and that. I'm more interested in reaching out to other users. You know, we spent a lot of time reaching out to people, you know, the other districts that were using Alma, and this is at least as big or bigger decision than when we chose Alma. So I'm just wondering, is there a plan to reach out to additional users? And
Donna's got that,
Donna's
yes.
raising her hand, I see.
I may have to go out of New Hampshire to talk to other users.
Gilmanton is the only, I mean, I realize it's new and that's probably.
I'll reach out to the sales rep again to see what else they were in a transition, the person that I was working with. So I will reach out again to see what schools are using this. I will let you know the others that made the top were also very new. So we were running into the same issue with Reveal because it was a true pilot. The strengths of these is they are more aligned with those ideas that Patty talked about, with the focus, the coherence, and the rigor. They embed the teaching practices, they embed the math practices, and they are very up to date on relevance with problems for students, and the engagement was high. But I will contact her again to see what I can find.
Thank you.
Tammy, I think it's super important to remember that part of why that's going to be tricky is because we're looking for something that is more traditional. But I think I would love to know some more about other schools that have used it and their performance data. The problem is the new edition is so new.
Yeah.
We may be saying, hey, this fits our style, and what I just want to prepare the committee that the answer may be that we may not get what you were asking for, Tammy, in terms of a clear sense of other districts having used it and been successful with it, in part because they revised it, but also because of what we're looking for a program for us. So I want the same thing that Tammy wants very badly, but I don't know that it exists. That's all I'm saying.
The other point to the performance data to keep in mind is we had no statewide testing nationally last year. So finding anything for anybody who might have been using it last year, that's going to be non-existent. And this year, even if they're doing testing this month, next month, we might not get holistic data until June, July, August. So some of that might not be accessible.
Well, it would be interesting to know it would be interesting to hear the experience of other districts that have chosen this, rolled it out, worked with it, you know, how their teachers have responded to it, what, you know, what kind of support they feel like they're getting. Just be good to have some information.
Yep. Donna can definitely ferret some of that out. Yep.
I'm also curious how Ryan and Chris are like responding to this. Have you guys looked at this? What are you thinking?
At Bakey, I've really relied on heavily on the conversations I've had with those who have piloted it and the other programs as well, just to get a sense of their level of comfort and just their take on it. And I think, like anything, it's going to be a new program no matter what we do next fall. So there's a lot of training that comes with that, but definitely the prevailing thought here is with Envision being the strongest program for us to move forward with.
How many teachers at Bakey piloted it?
For
Right.
5, there was K through 3 plus a special educator. We had one teacher at every grade level and one special educator at each building.
Okay. And what did they generally say, Chris? What was their general feedback for you?
So, I mean, there are a number of things they say. It's about, you know, the quality of the materials, the the content, the way that it's laid out, that's student, friendly. I think there's also a technology component that's connected to these programs. Most of them have some online resources. And given where we are with the pandemic, obviously being able to access things remotely matters pretty significantly to our staff. And they felt like Envision's technology setup was far superior to what they saw in other programs too.
Okay. Donna?
So the technology piece in Reveal, the other one, it just wasn't quite up to what, because it was still in development form. We were further ahead, but the engagement was high at both buildings. I don't, Ryan, you were probably going to say that, but in the technology. So to be able to show the videos, to be able to know that if a student's absent, you have to remember, like Patty opened with, we piloted this during a pandemic. So the technology piece was really at the forefront, where if we did this 2-3 years ago, even though it wasn't available, that wouldn't have been probably on our criteria as high as it was.
I'll jump in real quick from Memorial's perspective. I mean, a lot of it has already been said. A lot of what Donna and Patty put into the presentation was a direct result of feedback that the teachers were able to provide over the January through February, time frame. Certainly teachers that piloted, provided the core of that feedback. But we of course, I'm sure at Bakey as well as Memorial used the PLC model. Teachers have had conversations and been able to review those aspects that they really found important as far as usability, as far as what was going to work best for teaching and engagement and so on. And so, the feedback tonight was really just kind of a synthesis of all of that. And, again, the feedback that I've heard from staff, I believe we had 4 members on that committee, was that Envision was the top choice. But just a quick wrap up. I do want to be fully transparent. I haven't had the opportunity to see the Envision materials, just because they're limited in what we've been able to have in the district at this time. But again, just based on conversation, it checks a lot of the boxes that we're looking for.
Don?
So Chris and Ryan, when the teachers were talking about, Envision being their top choice, was there another one that was the second choice close, or was it, really far away? I mean, I guess I'm just trying to figure out where.
That's for you.
Okay.
If you're okay with me answering this.
Yeah.
We came to a consensus. Reveal was very close. It really came down to the availability. So if I had to purchase right now, I cannot purchase Reveal today. It will be ready for me to purchase or to pilot. But when we looked at the technology, there were strengths and similarities in both programs. But when you look at what we've just been living in this pandemic and all the unknowns, the known is I can purchase Envision. It had a balance of practice problems in context, out of context, which seemed to meet the needs. It had the profile that would lead to algebra, even though that wasn't on our criteria. It was in the back of our minds. It was in the documents that we reviewed. It had the differentiation available. We did not test all of that because our pilot time was very short to be able to meet this deadline. We spent the first half of the year going through the IMET, looking at ed reports. Simultaneously, they are teaching and doing their full-time jobs. So eliminating having those discussions in the committee. So I would say that Reveal was close. Both were good options based on the needs set forth by the district, by our internal checklists.
Okay, so if buying right now wasn't a major factor, what maybe would have been the top choice.
It still would have been Envision because it was ready when we piloted. So if, for example, when we were going through one of the visuals, the numbers weren't showing on one of the screens. It was little, but they went and fixed it. They said, we just haven't put, that's in our sandbox. It's not ready for publication. So they were trying to stay ahead of us because most people piloted beginning units. We felt that it was really critical to have a seamless transition to pilot the units that we were currently teaching because we're a PLC model school, and to have those conversations about the data, we wanted it to be relative to the content we were teaching across the entire team, across the grade level. The other lens we looked at was the Vision for Workshop model, and Envision and Reveal both fit that. So I don't know if that helps or not, if that answered your question enough.
I guess I was more asking, what the teacher's preference was.
So we came to a consensus.
Right. I know, I guess I was just wondering, when you were looking at number 1 and number 2, were they real close or was it really far apart?
It was not very far apart. It was really a great discussion in that we really felt strongly that having a K-6 continuum right now would be important. We've merged schools, we've come together, we've worked through a pandemic. Having that continuity for students right now seems to be an important piece. Reveal, looking at the ed reports, has only been evaluated for the 6th grade. It hasn't been evaluated K-5. So if we went through that checklist, Envision stood out as the stronger program for where we are right now.
Jamie?
Yeah, I just want to point out from my perspective, I would like to move as quickly as we can. I would not like to have another class suffer through everyday math. In my opinion, I have an extremely high dislike for everyday math. I try not to use the word hate, but I have an extremely high dislike for everyday math.
That was validated throughout this process, it appears. They're not very well regarded. Tom?
Yeah, I would agree with Jamie and that's why we went with a program that isn't, if you don't like everyday math, you're not going to like Eureka, because Oyster River only went with Eureka over everyday math by 1 staff member's vote in a consensus poll. 1 person. And it was tough. They did a flat, straight vote. In my understanding, I could be wrong, but my understanding was that it was really, really close between Eureka and everyday math because they are so similar. If you want to have the traditional component, we're going to have to take some risks. And I think that the only way that this group is going to feel comfortable with those risks is to do the things that we've outlined in this conversation, which I agree with completely and had a feeling this is where we would end up. Patty and I talked before the phone call. I said, Patty, 1 of 2 things are going to happen. We're either going to approve this today, or we're going to have people in to look at the books because we're not having an in-person meeting. We're going to have some more conversations and do a little more research. What I need as a superintendent is for the board members on this committee to feel 100% comfortable that we're taking a reasonably calculated risk. We can't say that we know exactly how a program of this magnitude is going to work until we've run it for a year. We can't know everything about Alma until we run it for a year. It is the way it is. You can only do so much piloting for a program like this. So I would propose that we adjourn this meeting, have folks come to the math open house on Friday.
From 7 to 3.
From 7 to 3, I guess, is what it's going to be. Jamie, I'll order some barbecue or something. You can come by and have some lunch, and Dawn, you can have, I don't know, we'll bring some donuts. We'll take
donuts, Tom. Come on.
Oh, that's right. Dawn doesn't need anything except, okay, I'll get you some. Yeah, Dawn's going to want egg whites and mushrooms or something. I don't know.
It just has to be gluten-free.
Okay. All right. So no, but we'll have some snacks, and Donna and Patty will be there, and it will give you all the time. Jamie, I agree with you. I would love to have you just sit and feel comfortable, and that you can take your time, look at things, talk to Patty and Donna. It's a big decision, but I also just want to remind everyone, it is not, it's not the end decision. Anything that we choose to do is going to be a component of a cycle of continuous improvement. We try it, we look at the results and the way it implemented, we make changes, and then we try again. And if something's not working, it's not working. We will deal with that. But the most important thing that we have to deal with, from my perspective, is that idea of what's called workshop model instruction. And what that is, just a really fancy way of saying exactly what Jamie was saying earlier. You've got kids who are struggling, you've got kids who are kind of doing fine with school, and kids that are way ahead. The workshop model allows you to address all three by giving students specific tasks to work on, and then differentiating for where they are on the curve. And that is the most important thing, that we need a math program to be dynamic enough to do that. And I'll tell you, that is really, really hard to find, right? Math programs are typically, right now in America, either driven by those Common Core instructional practices that make us kind of anxious as parents, like, what is this, right? Why are you moving all these blocks over here and putting stuff here, and going to get the kitchen spoons to count them, just to figure out how to add, 15 plus 18. I don't want any of that for our kids. But I do think that it's important for us to recognize that we're kind of looking at a traditional model, is really what we're doing. And that's why this program is the one that rose to the top, was because of the workshop component with the traditional model. What we really want is differentiation. Differentiation is allowing kids who are struggling to work at their level and get support, allowing kids that are ahead to move forward. That's a key component. So I would propose that we adjourn and let folks come to the office, and then also that Patty and Donna just do whatever they can to get a hold of any district that's implemented this as much as they can with fidelity in the absolute nightmare that is the pandemic, right? So I just don't know how we're going to get good data on that with the pandemic, but we can at least talk to some people, call some school districts that have been using it for the last year, and find out what they have to say on the street level. I think it's important to be careful about getting those contacts solely from a vendor, because they will know who to send you to that has a relationship with the vendor, or a bias. I think that we should talk to some districts that maybe we just kind of search and Google this program and what districts are using them, and then give them a call, kind of cold call them. Okay, I just want to keep the validity of the data as clean as possible. So I ask, does that sound like a good plan for the next step? And if we'd like to schedule another meeting in a week, we're happy to do that. What is the will of the committee? We want to take, as I said at the board meeting, I didn't want this committee to change in any way. I want to take this slow and do it right.
Amy?
Yeah, to me, that's fine. I'll just coordinate when people will be in through Patty to make sure that we're not all there at the same time. But that makes sense to me. And Tom, you're stating about we're going to need to take risk in order to make sure that we have a traditional component. What a sad statement about the state of math in this country, that's a risk. And from my perspective, the greater risk is not taking that risk and just continuing to have people suffer through everyday math.
Yep. And I agree with that, Jamie, but I don't want to rush. We don't have to make a decision today, is what I'm really trying to say.
Understood.
I want people to feel good about the decision we make, so that when we say in a year or two, hey, that was a really good decision, we did it thoroughly, or in a year or two when we say, yeah, this part of this is not working for us, we know why, right? Like, it's just important to do this right.
Do we want to schedule? I think the open house is a good idea.
Just email me and I'll put you guys in. So no worries about that.
Should we schedule another meeting to regroup? Do you want to do that now, or do we want to wait? What?
I would advise that we schedule another meeting for next Wednesday at 4:30.
or even 4 o'clock, if you can do it, just so that we can get going and have time to do it. Whatever works for you guys. We want to help you.
I'm for that.
Yeah, 4:30 is better for me for my work schedule, but
That's fine.
It's fine. Yep. Whatever works. 4:30 next Wednesday. Let's see what we can. Donna, do you think you can do some lightning fast, phone calls and check-ins with some folks before next Wednesday?
I've already sent her a list of places.
I had a feeling, Patty. I know you. I can tell when you're working and we're talking.
Did you get any feedback yet on those?
Not quite. I just hit send and I've got a 5-minute delay.
I have to tell you
just a little
that
behind.
I was impressed with how fast my friend, who is a principal that I trust at a very high level, it was one of their top 2 programs. And I think that if they'd done these revisions when they were looking, they might have gone with it. I think the things that they fixed were things that I'm going to call him tomorrow and talk with him about his process.
Yeah, that'd be good. Good idea.
Yep. Awesome. Well, good work, everyone. And I just, before we go, I want to say thank you, Patty, and thank you, Donna, and Chris, and Ryan, and all the teachers for really, really digging in. No one here is saying that we're not going to go with this program. We just want to feel 100%, or, I'll take 90% certain in light of what Jamie just said. I agree with Jamie. We need to not do everyday math next year. So if it means taking more of a risk, I'm good with that. We'll work through it. We've got an amazing team. We'll figure it out.
We have awesome teachers, and I just want to echo that because this was a crazy year, and they took this on and they smiled and they did it, and that's a testament to who we've got, because they know that this needs to be fixed too. So we're all in this for the right reasons. So we just want to have the right outcome.
Thank you. Jamie and John, before we adjourn, I didn't mean to leave off the agenda any reorganizational activity. If either of you guys want to serve as chair, I'm willing to do it again, but I just figured I just didn't think of it when I made up the agenda. Do you want me to continue as chair, or should we talk about electing a new chair?
New subcommittees haven't been set, so I don't know that we officially set. So I don't know that we need to do that today. I think we kind of, when we talked at the school board meeting, Tom recommended that we, especially with this committee, keep it as is through April when we decide, what to do with this math program. That was really important that we not make any changes before that. So I feel like we should, personally, I feel like we should keep it the same. Tammy should stay chair, and we just keep going. We just need to get through this with consistency so we can make progress for our students and our staff.
Okay.
I'm all good with that.
I didn't want to look like I was staging a coup or anything.
No, absolutely
Thanks,
not.
Tammy.
No way, Tammy.
Tammy, you are probably the most appropriate rule-following person I've ever met in my life, and it saved us a bunch of time. So don't change a thing.
Yep.
Okay. All right. With that, we will adjourn. Thank you very much. We will meet again next Wednesday.
All right, great work,
All right.
everyone. See you
Thank
Friday.
you.